Hello, the steak is a bit too salty, isn't it? Oh, wait, mother-in-law, you prepared it, didn't you? Oops, my mistake. I'm Kayla, a 31-year-old nurse. At this moment, it's not my mom, but my cheerful mother-in-law, Bobby's mom, serving the goulash. Ever since Bobby and I tied the knot, she's shown me nothing but love. Even when Bobby isn't around, I often visit my in-laws' home to share meals and cook together. My relationship with my parents isn't the best, making the bond I share with my mother-in-law even more special to me. She's an incredibly warm and lively person who raised Bobby and his brother on her own after a divorce during Bobby's childhood. I was initially apprehensive about meeting her because a friend had once warned me that in-laws are enigmas that you'll spend a lifetime trying to understand. However, any fears quickly dissipated the moment we met. I've always wanted a daughter. We've only had rowdy boys in our house. Thanks for marrying Bobby, she once told me, squeezing my hand affectionately. It was then I knew deep down that we would get along well. After we got married, she suggested, let's be like friends and skip the formalities. At first I was hesitant, but now we can comfortably joke and playfully tease each other. We even pretend to be a stereotypical mother-in-law and daughter-in-law duo, much to the surprise of others who learn of our actual friendly relationship. I still maintain a formal tone during large gatherings or rituals. So, Bobby is working again today? I asked. Yes, he's caught up due to staff shortages, though his job shouldn't normally involve much overtime, she replied. Honestly, I'm happier to see you, Kayla, than Bobby. I always enjoy our cooking time together, she added, making my day. As we chatted, my phone rang. It was Bobby. Hey, Kayla, it's me. Sorry, but I'm stuck at work and can't make it over tonight, he explained. This wasn't the first time. Again? Your mom's been waiting, preparing dinner for you, I responded. I know, but work is hectic and she enjoys your company more than mine anyway. Please look after her for me, he said before ending the call abruptly. And so the pattern continues, leaving my mother-in-law and me to spend another evening together. Oh, I exclaimed in surprise. He just ignores his family just like my ex-husband used to, I lamented. Just as we were discussing this, a voice interrupted us. Could you keep it down? I can hear you outside. The voice belonged to Bobby's younger brother, Russell, who we'll refer to simply as Russell. Russell, still unmarried, lives with his mother in their family home. Oh, sorry. Welcome home, Russell, I greeted him. But as usual, he just nodded and headed straight to his room. He's always been the reserved type. My mother-in-law often expressed her concern about whether Russell had found someone special yet. Although Russell and Bobby look alike, their personalities couldn't be more different. Bobby is outgoing, whereas Russell is more introverted. Their relationship as brothers is neutral, not particularly close, but certainly not distant. I've heard plenty of stories about the difficulties others face with their in-laws, but I've been fortunate to have a harmonious relationship with mine. There were occasional concerns, of course, but overall I was living a contented life. Little did I know I was about to be swept into an unexpected situation. It happened on a scorchingly hot day, the hottest of the year, the kind of day when we typically see a surge in heat stroke cases at the hospital. That day, a patient was rushed in, and to my shock, it was my mother-in-law. Russell had found her unconscious in the yard. Gardening is more than a hobby for her, it's her passion. The yard is always blooming with a variety of plants that change seasonally. On pleasant days, she loves to spend time in the garden, sometimes enjoying a cup of tea. Unfortunately, it seemed she had collapsed from heat exhaustion while deeply engrossed in her gardening. Russell, who looked deeply concerned, pleaded with me, "Please help my mom." Seeing the worry etched on Russell's face made me realize how deeply he cared for her. I reassured him, "Don't worry, everything is going to be all right. Have you told Bobby about this?" Russell shook his head. I tried calling him several times, but he never answered. Is Bobby working today? He should be off today. When I left for work this morning, he was still asleep, I replied. No, he's off today. He might still be sleeping. I'll contact him, I said, then asked Russell, could you handle the hospital admission procedures for your mom? Of course, thank you so much, Russell replied gratefully. Fortunately, it turned out that my mother-in-law had only suffered mild dehydration. After receiving intravenous fluids, she regained consciousness and was even able to chat. Despite insisting she was fine, she was hospitalized for a few days for further tests and observation. I must have overexerted myself because I suddenly felt weak and collapsed. I'm sorry for causing you worry, Russell. I apologized as I regained some strength. Russell, ever the stoic, brushed it off with a simple, not a big deal, maintaining his usual cool composure. Realizing I hadn't yet contacted Bobby, I dialed his number several times but received no response until finally a groggy voice answered. Hello? Bobby, you finally picked up. How long do you plan on sleeping? I asked, trying to hide my irritation. His response came lazily. Actually, I've been up for a while. I haven't seen Mom recently and thought I should do something nice, so I took her to a gourmet bistro. His words sounded suspicious, and I felt a pang of realization. I see. She must be happy then. Yeah, she seemed really happy. She's so clingy, it's almost troublesome, he said nonchalantly. Just as he was about to end the call, I interjected, Wait, can you put her on the phone? I'd like to speak with her. He hesitated, clearly caught off guard. No, she just went to the bathroom. I'll pass on the message. That's okay, I'll ask her myself next time I see her. Are you coming home early today? I probed. Sorry, but I have to work after this. Russell tried calling me earlier too, but I figured it wasn't anything urgent, so I just ignored it. He laughed before abruptly hanging up. His dismissive attitude and flimsy excuses made it clear to me. I had suspected it for some time, but now it was evident that Bobby was having an affair, likely lost in a romantic daydream with someone else. Determined not to let him off the hook easily, I began to plan my next steps. On the day I confirmed Bobby's betrayal, I packed my belongings and left our home. I left behind my wedding ring and a note that simply read, "Be ready," on the desk. I rented a hotel room near my workplace and started living there. My life as a nurse afforded me a decent salary, and because I often visited my in-laws on my days off, I didn't have many expenses. Though I hadn't saved much money since getting married, the idea of my financial resources dwindling was a concern, but one I was prepared to handle. With a few possessions and a strong resolve, I faced the new chapter of my life head-on, ready to confront the challenges ahead. I had resolved to make Bobby account for everything that had been lost. The day after I left our home, he tried to contact me, presumably having returned in the early morning and realizing the gravity of the situation. Despite his multiple calls, I chose to ignore them. When it became clear that I wasn't going to answer, he began to flood my inbox with messages. Initially, his texts were pleading, "Kayla, you must have misunderstood something. I'm worried. Please come home. It was my fault." However, as time passed, his tone shifted dramatically, becoming more demanding. "Hey, respond to me. If you want a divorce, go ahead. You're the one who mentioned divorce, so I expect alimony." Then he would swing back to apologize. His erratic messages made me question his emotional stability. Seeing him become increasingly desperate, I knew it was time to confront the situation. The following week, I visited the in-laws to celebrate my mother-in-law's discharge from the hospital after her tests came back clear. "Thank you, Kayla, for organizing this lovely gathering." My mother-in-law expressed her gratitude as we planned to enjoy her favorite cake from the bakery she adored. Her face lit up with joy when I mentioned the cake. During the celebration, she inquired quietly, "So, how are things with that matter?" "All the preparations are complete. I can't wait," I replied with a determined smile. As we were enjoying our dinner, the doorbell rang. The seriousness that washed over my mother-in-law's face when she saw who was on the intercom told me everything I needed to know. "Come in," she said coldly, and the front door opened to reveal Bobby, whom I had insisted must come as we needed to talk. I had already shared everything with my mother-in-law about Bobby's infidelity, and she was understandably furious. However, she repeatedly apologized for her son's actions, which made me feel guilty. "Kayla, why didn't you contact me? I've been so worried," Bobby began, trying to cut through the tension. "It's fine, cut the drama," I interrupted. "I think you know, but divorce is the only option here. Of course, I'll be taking alimony." The topic of money instantly triggered a defensive response from Bobby, who up to that point had seemed somewhat composed. "What? Why do I have to pay the alimony? It should be Kayla who pays." "Enough about money," I said firmly, silencing the brewing argument. The time for discussions had passed, and it was now a matter of taking formal steps to address the dissolution of our marriage. I couldn't help but question Bobby's reasoning abilities, but I knew that getting emotional wouldn't help the situation. I needed to keep a level head. Calmly, I responded, "You're the one who cheated. It's clear you're at fault, and you should be the one to pay alimony." Despite his muttered protests, the usually reserved figure of my mother-in-law reached her breaking point. "Bobby, you're just spouting nonsense. Just go ahead, get the divorce, and pay Kayla the alimony. And don't you dare show your face here again, or I'll bury you in the garden," she exclaimed, her patience finally worn thin. As she was about to continue her tirade, I quickly intervened to prevent any further outbursts. "Bobby, aren't you ashamed to put your parents through this? Sign these," I urged, placing the prepared divorce papers in front of him. He looked visibly shocked, perhaps not expecting the divorce talk to become so real. His surprise deepened when I questioned, "Why did you come alone today? Didn't I ask you to bring her along?" Taking him back with my glare, he responded seriously, "I did talk to her, and she seemed willing, so I brought her along. She's waiting in the car right now." Frustrated with his mumbling, I snapped, "Just go get her." Understanding the urgency, he left and soon returned with a woman whose presence was anything but subtle. "Excuse us," the woman entered with a grating voice, brimming with inappropriate enthusiasm for the situation. "Hi there, mother-in-law. Nice to meet you. I'm Alexis." "And long time no see, Kayla," she said with a chuckle upon seeing me. "Alexis," I remarked dryly, not impressed. "I'm surprised you haven't changed at all." It was not a compliment. I was referring to her personality, which seemed as brash as ever. Though she was clearly a woman in her 30s, her style, clothes and makeup resembling that of a high school girl, didn't suit her maturity level. "Really? That's so nice. Maybe it's because I go to a good beauty salon. As for you, Kayla, have you aged a bit?" she said, laughing snidely. Bobby, my husband, looked stunned by the exchange. You two know each other?" "Yes, we were classmates in high school. Haven't seen each other since we graduated, but who would have thought we'd meet again like this?" I replied. Bobby, seeming oddly relieved by this revelation, made an absurd suggestion. "Oh, come on, you could have said that sooner. If she's your friend, there's no alimony, right? That's good news." The situation was farcical and surreal. Bobby's attempt to twist the narrative showed his desperation, but it was clear to me that our paths had diverged irreversibly. The time had come to set the terms clear, despite his delusions. Bobby's absurd declaration that he wouldn't have to pay a dime because Alexis was my friend left me speechless with disbelief. "No, we're not friends," I corrected sharply, disgusted as he referred to her as my princess, a term that brought back unpleasant memories from our early dating days when he used to call me Princess Kayla. It was so irksome that I eventually made him stop. His penchant for cringeworthy nicknames had always been a sore point. When I first discovered Bobby's betrayal, I didn't hesitate to consult a lawyer. As the investigation unfolded, it turned out his affair was with Alexis, a woman notorious for pursuing other women's partners. She had a history of flirting with taken men, often sparking disputes despite her less-than-average looks. However, her overflowing confidence seemed to make her believe she was the most attractive person around. I rarely engage with social media, but a friend informed me that Alexis was quite active there, boldly messaging any man she fancied. It turns out she had reconnected with Bobby this way. Learning that Alexis worked as a housemaid added to the surreal nature of the revelation. It felt demeaning that my husband's mistress was someone who behaved in such a low manner. "I'm tired of this conversation. Can you just sign the papers quickly?" I urged Bobby, who had been dragging his feet about the divorce. Surprisingly, he signed the divorce papers without further hesitation, still under the delusion that there would be no need for alimony. "Now I can finally be with you, Bobby. I'll always be your pretty wife," Alexis cooed, trying to sound endearing, a sight painfully awkward to witness, especially from a woman in her 30s. Despite the absurdity, Bobby seemed unfazed, which made me question his judgment. "So, mother-in-law, please get along with me from now on," Alexis chirped, trying to win over my mother-in-law, who flatly responded, "No thanks," with a tone that brooked no argument. Alexis began to whine to Bobby, complaining about the unfairness, even as he started rambling about how she's good friends with Kayla. Just then, my brother-in-law Russell walked in, catching the tail end of the drama with a wry smile, instantly grasping the situation. "Wait, isn't that Russell? No way, are you the brother he mentioned?" Alexis exclaimed, suddenly energized upon seeing him. She was getting overly excited on her own, while Russell coolly replied, "Long time no see, Alexis." It turned out that Alexis and Russell had once worked together at a part-time job. Considering Russell's good looks, it wasn't surprising that Alexis had shown interest in him. Ironically, due to her terrible memory, she had been fired from that job, a fact that added yet another layer of complexity to the unfolding drama. "I'm going to be your new sister-in-law. Are you happy?" Alexis swayed as she addressed Russell, who responded with a cold, "Are you serious? That's the worst." His chilly retort seemed to shock Alexis, freezing her in place momentarily. "Oh, this was sent to me by a friend. That's you, right?" Russell then pulled up a certain website on his phone. It was one of those distasteful sites where people poke fun at others' social media mishaps. Alexis was frequently the butt of jokes there, with comments like, "Alexis is exhausting today too," and "At this point, it's just a joke." Russell also showed us one of Alexis's social media accounts filled with selfies, clearly identifying her in each. Out of the corner of my eye, I watched Alexis's reaction, expecting her to be upset. However, she shrugged it off. "It's hard being popular. These are mostly just women being jealous. Oh well, whatever." Her response was defiant, but her energy had noticeably dipped, betraying a hint of hurt. Despite everything, I felt a twinge of sympathy for her. The internet can be cruel, and nobody deserves to be humiliated like that. "Well, it doesn't matter. From now on, Bobby and I are going to live a glamorous life," she declared with forced enthusiasm. Hearing those words, I couldn't help but burst into laughter. A glamorous life? Really? Could you stop acting tough because your husband got taken? It must be tough to at least act like you snagged a doctor, huh? At Alexis's words, we all burst into laughter. "Wait, when did Bobby become a doctor?" "Congratulations," I mocked, laughter overtaking me. My husband had posted a photo of the hospital where I work on social media with the caption, "Another hard-working day." He used to pick me up after my shifts, and Alexis had misconstrued it to mean that Bobby worked there as a doctor. The simplistic equation of hospital equals doctor was hilariously naive. But Bobby has always been generous with money. He even took me to a gourmet bistro the other day and paid for my spa appointments. Alexis continued, her tone increasingly desperate. I didn't think my husband had much money, I mused, puzzled by her claims. When I confronted him about the source of his generosity, Bobby dropped a bombshell. I used Kayla's credit card. Using someone else's credit card is, of course, illegal, even if we're family. But my main card was still in my wallet. I had used it to pay for a hotel just the other day. So, whose card did he use? As I pondered this, Bobby quickly tried to smooth things over. Well, what's done is done. Besides, we're still married. Look, this is a family card. It's your card. He must have forgotten, but we had gotten that family credit card when we were married as part of a campaign to earn more points. His clumsy attempt to explain away the misuse was just another layer in the unfolding drama. I always had my own credit card, so I never needed to use our joint account. The payment this time must have been from his own funds, I thought to myself. You still have your severance pay from your previous job, right? You'll figure it out, I said with a faint smile. The color drained from Bobby's face. He had once held a respectable position at a well-known company where his hard work was appreciated, and he had even been promoted to team leader. However, a few years into our marriage, he abruptly resigned, claiming I was the reason. As a nurse, I often worked night shifts, and sometimes my income exceeded his, which bruised his ego. He began making remarks like, "If Kayla's earning well, I don't need to work, right?" I never took issue with his choice. I appreciated his help with household chores, which did make a difference. Yet the financial burden of being the sole earner was heavy. Almost all of my salary went towards our living expenses, leaving me with no savings. Bobby always found excuses to avoid visiting my in-laws, likely fearing my mother-in-law's comments on his unemployment. I had naively hoped he would eventually seek stable employment again. Then, one day, Bobby proudly announced he had secured a job. He had started working part-time at a convenience store near the train station and had quickly been promoted to team leader. As I relayed this story, Alexis scoffed under her breath. Convenience store team leader? Then, as if a switch had flipped, she stood up abruptly, shouting, "You've been lying to me. You're the worst. I'm going to sue you." She stormed out like a frightened rabbit. Watching her hurried departure, I thought to myself, "It's you who's going to get sued, sorry to say," though I kept these words to myself. The room fell into an eerie silence after her exit, until it was broken by Bobby, unbelievably saying, "Well, that's how it is, Kayla. Let's get along from now on." Stunned by his cluelessness, I was about to react when my brother-in-law Russell, a former judo team captain, gracefully flipped Bobby over with a perfect throw. My mother-in-law clapped, exclaiming, "What a throw!" I struggled to suppress my laughter. Bobby, who had some judo experience himself, looked utterly foolish, taken by complete surprise. Following these events, I swiftly filed for divorce. Bobby ended up paying me alimony from a term deposit that had matured before our marriage. He once showed up at my workplace post-divorce looking rather pitiful, but after I threatened to call the police if he ever returned, he never appeared again. Considering pursuing legal action against Alexis crossed my mind, but ultimately I decided against it. The thought of entangling myself further with her was unappealing. I felt certain that her actions would eventually lead to her facing difficulties. During a consultation with my lawyer, I learned more unsettling news about Alexis. "The woman your husband was involved with has been a problem for several others as well," my lawyer informed me. It turned out Alexis had entangled herself with many people, not just my husband, and her actions had affected over 10 victims. These included individuals whose marriages she had disrupted and others who had lent her money only to see her disappear. It was clear that she was bound to face consequences for her behavior. A few days later, a high school friend sent me a viral video that had been circulating on social media. It showed a group of angry victims gathered in front of Alexis's house, loudly demanding, "Give back our money, we'll never forgive you." The situation escalated to the point where the police had to intervene. Amidst the chaos, Alexis was seen yelling from her window, "I did nothing wrong." To my surprise, Bobby, my ex-husband, was among the crowd of victims. Seeing him there, I felt a deep sense of relief that I had made the right decision to divorce such a misguided man. Despite the divorce, I maintained a friendship with my former mother-in-law. We occasionally met for meals, continuing our relationship as friends rather than relatives. It was a comforting reminder that not all ties had to be severed because of the divorce. Sometime later, my former brother-in-law Russell shared some happy news with me. "I'm getting married," he announced, introducing me to his charming girlfriend whom he had been dating since high school. Russell had moved on to a reputable company and had kindly invited me to his wedding. Reflecting on Russell's responsible and earnest nature, it was hard to believe he was related to Bobby. I felt confident that Russell would build a strong and loving family. With these thoughts, I was inspired to continue my work with renewed vigor. As a proud nurse, I was determined to keep giving my best, uplifted by the positive connections I still had, and the strength I drew from my resilience.